one more minute to make sure that we're seeing people still signing up as we go here. So we want to give them another minute. I know none of you can respond to me verbally, but it's very weird to be staring out there and know you guys are there, and I'm just staring. I'm sure everyone is feeling that way on a lot of their calls and webinars these days. Kind of interesting. All right, so Kit, I think what we'll do is we'll kind of get started, and I know people are still coming on board and they'll get that, but at least I can get started kind of with a couple of announcements, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds great, thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone. Obviously, I think everybody on the call probably knows me, but my name is Krista Jack. I'm the president of the Lakeville Chamber of Commerce, and so we're excited. This is our first virtual luncheon. Obviously, as we know, Kit was scheduled to join us for our April luncheon on April 8th. Being that April is Stress Awareness Month, we thought it was perfect, and Kit came very highly recommended to us. And unfortunately, we know that couldn't happen. So I'm very excited that he was able to fit us in here later in the month, and we're able to do this with you guys virtually. We think the timing on this is perfect, and it's some great information. Before I kind of officially announce him and introduce him, I just want to give recognition to some of our sponsors. Obviously, for our luncheons, every month we have a couple of spotlight sponsors. And so our two spotlight sponsors for April missed their chance to be able to speak to you guys in person in the luncheon. So I do want to give them some recognition. Firefly Credit Union is one of our April sponsors, and they're amazing. Simona Stojanovic, which I don't know, Simona, if you're on there, but she is one of our chamber ambassadors and is very active with the chamber. And so Firefly's mission is to inspire their members to achieve lifelong financial well-being. They obviously have savings and checking accounts. They do loans for homes, vehicles, personal. They have Visa Rewards credit cards available. They have financial advisors on staff that can really help you with your needs and creating custom plans. They do a lot of financial education as well for their members and for businesses who so that they can kind of address some of those popular financial topics. So be sure and check that out. Also, our other spotlight sponsor for April is Kelby Custom Cleaning, and Amy Kelby is the owner. She's a Lakeville resident, and she has been doing high quality custom cleaning with her team since 1997. They service the South Metro area. They do it all. They do windows, blinds, lights, fans. They'll do little things. They'll clean the inside of your microwave. I mean, so think about that. Any of those things that you probably are staring at right now and don't want to do, they will do it. For those of you that want more, need to have natural cleaning products, they can use your natural cleaning products that you have in your home for cleaning as well. So make sure that you're reaching out to Amy and her team if you guys are looking around your house and know that you need some cleaning right now. And so with that, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Kit Welchlin. And so Kit has been public speaspeaking since the age of 9. Believe it or not, by 16, he was facilitating presentations on leadership and citizenship and community service for both 4-H and Future Farmers of America. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in speech communication, business administration, and political science, and then a master's in speech communication and business administration. So he's got just a little bit of education behind him on that. He purchased his first manufacturing company when he was 21. By 26, he was the CEO and chairman on the board of 3 manufacturing companies in 3 different states. And he's been an instructor with the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. He is a professional member of the National Speakers Association. And in 2014, he was inducted into the Minnesota Speakers Association Hall of Fame. So we have got one of the good ones here with us. I'm very excited, Kit. So I'm sure people are tired of listening to me. So Kit, with that, I am going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Krista. Thank you for that flattering introduction. My goodness, after an introduction like that, I can't wait to hear what I have to say. Great to be with you, and I'm glad we have this opportunity to work together. One of the things that Krista mentioned is that I began public speaking at the age of 9, and according to the book of lists, public speaking sometimes ranks as high as #1 as one of the most stressful events we find ourselves in. And as a professional speaker since 1991, I put myself in that situation about 3,500 times. So I'm going to share with you what's in my toolbox so I can manage stress. So I'm going to put together a little slide presentation here for you. And this is what we'll be discussing over the next 45 minutes or so. Here we go. Boy, it certainly is stressful, isn't it?
Well,
Krista,
and I should say too,
go.
while Kit's pulling that up, please make sure you're obviously submit your questions, and we will, once Kit is done with the presentation, we will take questions at the end. So make sure you're submitting questions on that chat area, and we'll take them at the end.
Thank you, Krista. Great idea. So today we're going to be talking about stress, time, and procrastination management, and we'll be discussing that in that order. Stress, of course, with COVID-19 and our business processes and procedures, and it's affected our families, it's affected our coworkers and colleagues, our customers, and the community overall. So we're going to talk about stress, what is stress, and also 15 physical remedies and 15 psychological strategies to minimize the damage. Then we're going to talk about 20 time management tips to get more done in less time, because now with the systems in flux, it seems like everything's taking a little bit longer, or we have to have a new way of approaching some of the activities that we used to be second nature in how we perform. And then I put procrastination off to the very end, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that today. But if not, you can invite me back for another meeting. So when it comes to stress, the question is, what is stress? Well, stress is simply wear and tear caused by life. According to the research by Dr. Leonard Hayflick, the human body has the biological potential to live to about 130 years. But we don't find very many people living into their 110s, 120s, or 130s. And one of the main reasons is because of the impact of stress. So let's take a look. We're born with a biological potential of 130 years. My oldest brother, Cabot, had the whooping cough when he was a kid. So he starts out with 130 years of potential, and he has the whooping cough. He's down to 125 years. Maybe as we were going through adolescence, self-esteem was low, stress was high. Now we're down from 125 years down to 120. Maybe in our late teens or early 20s, we got involved in some racy relationships. Now we're down from 120 down to 115. Or maybe we bought a small manufacturing company when we were 21. Now we're down to 57 or so. But it's some of those choices we make in life that create the stress that we have in life. And some of those are certainly choices that we make, and some of those are transitions that we have to make adjustments for. So stress is wear and tear caused by life. It's gradual, it's consistent. Sometimes I call it the erosion or corrosion caused by life. And it's kind of those activities or events or relationships that cause us anxiety or frustration and tension, and it kicks us into a stress response. It's a physical state. We get tired from it psychologically. We worry. Now, what's interesting is the mind has a hard time telling the difference between what is real or what is well imagined. So we're in a situation like this with the pandemic. We worry about whether or not we put enough money aside to get through this stretch where maybe our employment is in jeopardy, or maybe we wonder or worry if we put enough money aside to get the kids through college, even though they're still in grade school, or maybe we worry about whether or not we set enough money aside to retire comfortably, even though we're not retiring for several years. But whenever we think about those things and worry, the mind has a hard time telling the difference between what is real or what is well imagined. But we can also use that to our advantage too. And we're going to talk about some strategies through positive visualization or affirmations or mental vacations to take some of the sting out of it. But according to the Nightingale Foundation, about 40% of the stress we feel, or about 40% of the things that we worry about, never happen. About 30% of what we worry about already has happened. We wish it wasn't that way. It is that way. About 12% of what we worry about are needless healthcare concerns, wondering if we're going to get the flu, get cancer, heart disease, COVID-19. All we can really be is well-fed, well-rested, well-exercised. The rest is kind of fate. 10% of what we worry about is petty. That's the day we don't like how our hair looks. Isn't that funny? That's the day we get the most compliments about our hair. People say, oh, I like your hair like that. Oh, really? I thought about shaving it off before I came to work. No, I like it. So about 8% of what we worry about, we should be worried about. The problem is trying to figure out which 8% that is. Now, Mark Twain used to put it this way. Imagine 10 troubles rolling down the road at you like tires. Can you imagine that? Imagine 10 troubles rolling down the road at you like tires. Probably 9 will roll in the ditch before they ever get to you. We tend to worry about a lot of things that simply never happens, but it does kick us into the stress response. Now, there's 3 stages of stress that we need to be aware of. The first stage is the alarm stage. Now, that can be simple things, getting up in the morning to an alarm clock. We're peacefully sleeping, and then there's noise, or there's music, or there's a chime, and we become alarmed. Now, we have 2 options in our response, either fight or flee. Fight, we get up, shut off the alarm, head to the showers, away we go. Or flee, we hit the snooze button and get 10 more minutes of sleep. And no matter how well or how poorly our day goes, we'll be exhausted. Now, that's a quick trip through the stress response, but this is something we inherited from our ancestors 50, 60,000 years ago. Let's say I was your ancestor, hairy cave dweller, and I'm outside my cave today on this beautiful day with my beautiful wife, Harriet. And we have a little fire, we snared a rat, rabbit, rodent, we're gonna have a little red meat in our diet, and all of a sudden in front of our cave, there jumps a mountain lion. Well, we become alarmed. Adrenaline's pumped into the system, heart rate increases. I have a constriction of blood flow to my extremities. So if I'm bitten in battle or lacerate my feet running through the jungle. But I also change psychologically. I look for weaknesses, points of vulnerability, areas that I can attack. I don't look at that mountain lion and think, wow, what a beautiful coat of hair. No, I'm thinking about break its paw, break its jaw. And whether I wrestle that big old pussycat to the ground or run through the jungle until I was safe. According to Dr. Ken Dykewald, our ancestors would literally lay down and sleep 20 to 40 hours before they'd be back to homeostasis, the condition they were in physically and psychologically, before the mountain lion jumped in front of the cave. Now, if that same old survival mechanism is kicking in today, and it is, what's the problem with that equation? Well, we're not getting the 20 to 40 hours of sleep every day. So let's take a look at what can happen, and that is that we can become burned out. But it's little things too. Let's say I submit a report to you and you say, Kit, this is a pile of trash, you're a dork. I become alarmed. Adrenaline's pumped into the system, blood sugars are released. I start to pant, my heart starts to pound, I have constriction of blood flow to my extremities. I'm preparing to either fight or flee. So let's say I decide to fight. So I dive across your desk, I wrestle you to the floor until you are unconscious. Then I lay down and sleep on your office floor for 20 or 40 hours. And then I get up, straighten my shirt, and head back to my office. That's what I'm supposed to do. Or you say, Kit, this is a pile of trash. You're a dork. I become alarmed. I decide to flee. So I run down 35W. I sleep under the bridge at 494 and come back to work on Monday. That's what I'm supposed to do. But can I do that? Maybe once. So I'm going to have to figure out a better way to respond. Otherwise, I'm going to become burned out. And I'll tell you what, burnout isn't pretty. If you truly do become burned out, it's not something you can cover from some time off in the summer or some long weekends over the holidays. If you truly do become burned out, according to the research by Dr. K.W. Sennett, it can take 2 to 4 years to recover from burnout. And I've never had anybody ever come up to me and say, oh, Kit, the years I was burned out, those are the best years of my life. No, they're the longest days of your life. So I don't want you to become burned out. But we should be able to see this coming too. First stage of burnout is physical fatigue. You're exhausted. I think the best way to tell you've hit this stage of physical fatigue or burnout is, let's say you have a favorite TV program you'd like to watch at 7 o'clock at night, and you sit down in front of the TV, and then there's a commercial break in about 5 minutes. Next thing you realize, you wake up and there's an infomercial on selling exercise equipment. You find the remote control, shut off the TV, head down the hallway, get a few more hours of sleep. You're exhausted. The second stage of burnout is psychological fatigue. And that's different for people. Some people get grumpy. Some people get grouchy. Some people go looking for a fight. Some people withdraw from relationships. My wife says that when I hit the psychological fatigue, I get touchy. Can you imagine that, me getting touchy? I don't get touchy. I go into denial. I say, I'm not touchy. You're touchy. But my wife thinks I'm being touchy. But for almost every one of us, we suffer from something called mindlessness or thoughtlessness. And I think the best way to tell you've hit the stage of burnout is, let's say you're on your way to the grocery store. And then when you get to the grocery store, you're thinking, that's right, I need to pick up a gallon of milk. And you can't remember exactly anything else that you need to pick up. So you grab some toilet paper. That never goes bad. You grab some paper towels, can always use those. And then you get in the line and you make eye contact with someone else standing in line, and you look in their cart and they have milk. So you go back to the far corner of the store, get your milk, and walk out with $20 of other grocery items. Or have you ever walked into a room and and can't remember why you walked into that room. Well, that mindlessness or thoughtlessness is somewhat dangerous. It's a kind of gives us a signal that we're physically fatigued and people get hurt. Psychologically, we're worrying and distracted, and people not only get hurt, but they can also get sick. So when it comes to that stage of burnout, psychological fatigue, according to OSHA, 16 days a year of work lost because people are physically sick or they get hurt, injured, stumble over things, run into things. And the last stage of burnout is spiritual fatigue. And spiritual fatigue is a sense of hopelessness, helplessness, thoughts of escape. You don't feel competent on the job anymore. You're not winking at yourself in the mirror anymore. You don't want to deal with any of your coworkers or clients anymore. You're sick of it. And I think the best way to tell you if it's spiritual fatigue is I think it's CBS has a TV show. The whole TV show is a bunch of stories about people that have run away to another part of the country for 5 or 10 years and none of their family and friends can find them. And as you're sitting there watching that TV show, you're wondering if you could do that, if you could just run away, or just take cash. Credit cards and checks are too easy to trace. Just take all the cash you can find. Now, it seems kind of silly we'd call this burnout. Who doesn't get tired every once in a while? I agree. Who doesn't get grouchy or grumpy every once in a while? Who doesn't walk into a room, can't remember why you did, and who doesn't lose hope? But if you truly go through these stages of burnout, it might take 2 to 4 years to recover. And those might be the most important 2 to 4 years with your parents or your kids or your spouse. So I don't want you to become burned out. So let's take a look at 3 questions we need to ask today and answer. One is, how well are we avoiding unnecessary stress? So what are those things we can avoid, or those relationships or competitive aspects of our lives that kind of stir up our response? How well are we responding to unavoidable stress, the stress that comes with our job, with with our families, and maybe have kids at home, and now they're doing schoolwork from home, and they're maybe at daycare, and you have little ones. And so how are we going to respond to that? So I'm going to give you 15 physical remedies and 15 psychological strategies. And how well are we practicing good health? Are we well fed, well rested, and well exercised? So here we go. So when it comes to physical remedies, first thing I'd like you to do is get organized. I don't know if that's going to take 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks, but get organized. What did our parents used to say? A place for everything and everything in its place. Awfully good advice. According to Chris Publications, in their book on time management, they estimate we spend 45 minutes a day, personally and professionally combined, just looking for things. That's 6 work weeks a year just looking for things. So we want to get organized. Also, you want to have a proper diet. You want to work into your diet some of those, what do they call them? Fruits and vegetables. You want to make sure you have a colorful plate. Might want to work in some exercise. Now, I want to give you the 5 criteria to an exercise program that will work if you put it to work. 5 criteria to an exercise program. Number 1 is it has to be something that causes you to move. That's real important in an exercise program. Otherwise, it just doesn't have the effect. It has to be something that causes you to breathe deeply so you get the aerobic benefit. It has to be something that causes you to bend, to put elasticity back into the muscles and ligaments. It has to be something you enjoy, and it has to be at your pace. And that's an exercise program that will last a lifetime. I'm not going to ask you to get up every morning and run 3 miles. I have a brother that does. I'll run if I'm real scared, but I don't run for exercise. What I do is I hook up the family's full-size 5-passenger collie and I take it down to the lake and back. Causes me to move, breathe, bend. How many of you know what I'm talking about? It's like having a Holstein heifer as a pet. Now, that's the only part I don't enjoy, but it is at my pace, and I'll walk that dog as long as it lives. Kids wanted a dog. I ended up with an exercise program. But you got to find an exercise program that will work for you. Take a massage class, or if you have a partner, get online, take a look at some YouTube videos and those very tight spots in your neck or back, figure out some massage techniques to take care of that. Relaxation exercises, sometimes that's just taking a personal assessment from the tip of your toes to the top of your head. And just to adjust your feet a little bit, to take some of the tension off your ankles or your knees, or maybe adjust your posture, stretch your lower back, or just let your shoulders drop. Sometimes they'll drop an inch or 2 if you let them. But just do it a little kind of an assessment of how your body feels and make those minor adjustments in your posture. Do some deep breathing. Inhale 5 seconds, hold it 15 seconds, exhale slowly for 10 seconds. Increases our lung capacity to nearly 80%, gives us a short-term benefit of being a long-distance runner, and you don't have to do all that running. It also puts a tremendous amount of oxygen in our bloodstream. Oxygenated blood is fuel for the brain. You've just gone from unleaded gas to jet fuel. You're quicker thinking, more articulate, more vocabulary available to you, and quicker wit just by deep breathing. Also, because it expands your lung capacity to nearly 80%, it lowers the pitch of your voice, it softens the tone of your voice. You sound warm and cooperative even if you're not. And it also stimulates blood flow to other parts of the body. Do some gentle stretching. My initial stress response is I get a knot in my neck on the left side of my neck and then a headache in my left temple. I don't know if that's just my stress response or because a brother threw a hay bale on my head 40 years ago, but that's it. Not my neck, headache, my left temple. So I do some gentle stretching to the side, about 5 seconds, slowly to my chin, and I go back. And then sometimes I pull my elbows across my chest to stretch the muscles on my back, but do some gentle stretching a couple of times a day. Get out of the rut of routine you find yourself in. Krista and I were joking that I went ahead and put on the shirt that I wore in the promotional material, so you'll recognize me. But also get out of the rut of routine you find yourself in. And this is one of the simple ways that I do that. I tend to wolf down 1 box of cereal a week. So this week I'm eating something called Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Wow, that's sweet. You should have that for dessert with vanilla ice cream. Last week I was eating something called Basic 4. Kind of tastes like silage. And then the week before I was eating something called almond nut clusters that had a squirrel on the box. And I kind of wonder if it wasn't for squirrels because a roof of my mouth just healed last Friday. But that's how I kind of live it up. Also, if you're going for walks in the evening, since we're in that shelter in place or stay at home suggestion by the governor, when you do go on your walk, reverse the direction. It's amazing. It's almost like you're walking down a different neighborhood. Or take a different route to the grocery store or a different route home when you run your errands, and just kind of see different places and go, oh, wow, look at that, a new quick trip, but kind of live it up a little bit by just mixing up that routine or get out of that rut. I take walking breaks rather than coffee breaks. And when it comes to walking breaks, sometimes people say, hey, take a hike. Let's take a look at this conversation.
Hi, this is Kip Welchlin, and welcome to seminarsonstress.com. Today's video blog is on stress management. Should I take a hike? Can't I sit at my desk responding to endless emails? I sit in important meetings, Of course, making critical decisions all the time. I have a stressful job. At my last meeting, one of my coworkers said to me, take a hike. Should I take a hike? Well, I'm not exactly sure what your coworker meant with their comment that you should take a hike, but I do know this. If you have a stressful job and you don't get much of a chance to be active throughout the day, it might be a good idea to take a walk, not necessarily a hike. And a walking break helps relieve stress. Instead of a coffee break, go on a walking break. Instead of sitting around, eating junk food, smoking cigarettes, and talking smart, go for a walk. Take a couple of laps around the building or down the hallway to relieve the stress and anxiety of your fast-paced career. Maybe over lunch, you can invite along someone you need to talk with about a stressful topic or conflict situation. Walking together will relieve the stress, burn up the adrenaline and blood sugars caused by the stress response, and give you time to respond rather than react. It works at home too. Take walking breaks with your family. Don't stink up the dining room table with conflict. Go for a walk and talk about family struggles. Wave at your neighbors, pet their dog, dodge some cars. This will give you time to reflect and respond kindly. Protect the dining room table for positive family exchanges rather than conflict situations. Hey, the walking break sounds good to me. I always feel better when I get outside and get some fresh air. There are a couple of things we need to discuss. Hey, why don't you take a hike? and we can talk.
How'd you like to work with that guy every day? Yeah. Not too long ago, I was speaking at a CEO conference, and a woman came up to me after the event and said, that other guy in the videos with you, he's kind of distracting. I said, that's me, don't you? No, it's not. I go, yes, it is, and I have to work with him every day. But I don't know if you had a dining room table like we had when we grew up. But we had a dining room table that there was a light above the dining room table that was on a cord. So you could pull that down, give it a snap like a treble light. And I would be sitting in my chair, minding my own business. The next thing I'd realize, my dad would have that light over my head and he would be asking me, so kid, how are things going at school? And my response would always be, what have you heard? It was more like an interrogation than a conversation. So when you're going to have those type of conversations, go for a walk, and it burns up the adrenaline, the blood sugars. It gives people time to respond rather than react. Takes the pressure off. Use music to your advantage rather than your disadvantage. I like what I do for a living, but after about 28 years and 3,500 presentations, every once in a while, I would say every 4, maybe 5 months, I just don't feel like it that day. So I have a playlist I listen to. It's ELO, it's Styx, Van Halen, Cheap Trick, 38 Special, REO Speedwagon, and I listen to that music. And when I get out of my SUV at the event, I'm like, give me a microphone, give me an audience. But that's not the way my wife wants me to come home at the end of the day. So I have a different playlist I listen to that has Neil Diamond on it, because Neil sings in my range. So I croak along with Neil. There's a Roy Orbison song, so I try to hit the high notes with Roy. There's a couple of Larry Graham songs on there, and well, there's even a Barry Manilow song on there. But I recognize I'm a better husband when I get home. I'm a better father when I get home. I'm a better listener. So you got to manage your own morale, and music can help do that. You might be considering, singing. That might have an impact on how well we manage the stress.
Hi, this is Kit Welchlin, and welcome to seminarsonstress.com. Today's video blog is on stress management, and the question is, are we happy because we sing? La 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 la, la 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 la. When I was a boy, world was better spot. What was so was so, what was not was not. Now I am a man, world have changed a lot. Some things nearly so, others nearly not. Hey Kit, I was wondering, do I sing because am I happy because I sing? Does singing really relieve stress? Yes, singing relieves stress. And we are happy because we sing. You should sing if you have a good voice or if you drive alone. When you sing, musical vibrations alter your physical and emotional state. The benefits of singing are both physical and psychological. Singing boosts oxygen levels in the blood, causes better circulation, and enhances the immune system. Singing releases feel-good brain chemicals called endorphins, associated with feelings of pleasure. Singing releases oxytocin, a hormone found to alleviate anxiety and stress. Also, singing lessens feelings of loneliness and depression. Singing can boost the mood and promote relaxation. Study after study has found that singing relieves anxiety. Singing is a great way to relieve tension and stress. Maybe you should try singing. Singing while commuting, singing while walking, or singing some karaoke. I love singing, and people love it when I sing. I like your karaoke idea. On my way home, it will be karaoke with Kit. A playlist of show tunes, The King and I, The Music Man, and South Pacific. This will be great. I feel better already.
I just realized I have no personal pride. Next thing I'd like you to do is to consider some of these other ideas. The number one strategy of Fortune 500 company executives is to have a hobby. Now, the key to the hobby is make sure it's significantly different than what you do on the job. So if things aren't going well at work, you can fall back on a different self-concept. Still like yourself personally, even if things are a little bit bumpy professionally. Also, smile and laugh. It releases endorphins. It's like a mild shot of morphine. And also, you want to have something in your calendar that I would call a date night. Maybe you're going to watch a movie on TV, or maybe you're going to order in, or maybe some takeout. But I want you to have something in your calendar you're always looking forward to. And I kind of also call that taking scheduled time off. You need to take care of yourself before you'll be able to take care of anybody else. Now, you might not be able to do all those physical remedies given the situation we find ourselves in with the pandemic. But you might be able to do some of these psychological strategies too. One of those is think of yourself as being self-employed, independent contractor, and probably now with a certain amount of isolation, it feels a lot more like that than it used to. So what are the talents, abilities, and skills, and what are you going to be rewarded for? And invest a little bit of time to become a little bit more flexible in those responsibilities. Continue your education and be creative about it. Maybe there's some YouTube videos, or maybe there's some newsletters that you'll finally get a chance to read. And when you used to have that commuting time, maybe that's the time now that you can invest a little bit of time in audio programs, and or maybe some sort of a newsletter that will enhance your professionalism or your skills at work. I set long-term goals. When I got into the speaking business back in 1991, we used to ask people to plan their life in decades. What do you want to see happen over the next 20, 30, 40 years? Now it's hard for me to get people to think past the next 12 months. I'd like you to put together a list of past accomplishments from when you're a little bitty kid till now. Any award, certificate, plaque, trophy, any acts of kindness, volunteerism, anything you should have been pat on the back, job well done. Put together a list of 25 past accomplishments. And the next time you face a challenge or an obstacle, you pull out a list of 25 success stories where you're the hero and heroine in every one of them. And you'll see that you've accomplished great things. You're bigger than what the situation you find yourself in right now. And it'll give you that confidence that you can take on this challenge or obstacle and get one more thing on that list. I'd also like you to do positive visualization. Instead of imagining things are going to go bad, imagine things are going to turn out just fine. There's a researcher that claims that human beings are successful 95% of the time, that 19 out of 20 times what we attempt, we do attain. So the odds are in our favor. So just go ahead and assume things are going to turn out just fine. You can also do positive affirmations. You can say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. You keep saying things like that, you'll be a U.S. Senator someday. You can also go on a mental vacation. I always find that I play my best round of golf in my mind. I'm hitting them right down the fairway. My approach shots are sticking on the greens. I'm putting like a madman. But you can also use it to go to the beach, go to the river, go to the park. Remember, the mind has a hard time telling the difference between what is real and what is well imagined. So when you think about those destinations that cause you to feel relaxation, just imagine being there. Blood pressure will drop, heart rate will slow, and the stress response will dissipate. Also, alter your interpretations. Get in the habit of saying at least. Let's say you run an errand today and you're sitting at your stoplight and your light is red and then it turns green, you enter the intersection, but somebody blows through their red light, you jam on your brakes, you say, wow, at least they didn't hit me. Now, maybe things aren't going well at work right now, but at least I still have a job. You know, maybe they're going well in my marriage now, but at least, well, okay, still have a job. But if they're still throwing dishes at you, there's still a relationship. I'd like you to understand your emotions so you can respond appropriately. All information simply comes through our senses. It's like a funnel. It's our interpretations that cause our feelings, and that gives us a menu of options and how we would express ourselves. So when we're spending this much time with our family, when we have this kind of a upheaval of our normal routines and our careers, we really have to pay attention to our emotions so they don't get carried away. For instance, here's a little story about a couple driving down a country road for several miles, not saying a word to each other. An earlier discussion led to an argument. Neither of them wanted to concede their position. I've been in that car before. As they passed a barnyard of mules, goats, and pigs, the husband asked sarcastically, relatives of yours? Yep, the wife replies, in-laws. So, I'd like you to think about, they both had different ways to either start that conversation or end it. And if we can collect our thoughts, I know it's an old idea, but you think at 800 to 1200 words per minute. So it only takes a couple of seconds to collect your thoughts, which will have an impact on your feelings. It gives you a different menu of options, and then express your best options. Sometime over the next day or two, there's going to be some things bugging you. I'd like you to slow down and put together a list of things that are bugging you. And then ask yourself this question, number 10, is this controllable? Do I have some impact, some influence? Can I do something about it? So let's say there's 4 things on your list and 2 of those are controllable. Well, get them on a list of things to do today and get them done. Make the phone call, schedule the meeting, send the email. Now, if there's anything else left on that list, you've just declared those uncontrollable. That's just the way it is. Now, those are the cards you're dealt. That's how they played out. Life's tough for everybody. Get over it. How'd you like to work with me every day? But sometimes we just have to stop, put together the list and say, is this controllable or not? And sometimes we just have to take a big old dose of acceptance. Some things are out of our control. I'd like you to build in some quality time for yourself. Now, we used to say quality time was with our family and friends, and of course that is, and it still is. We just have more of it now than we used to, given COVID-19 and the shelter in place. So quality time, I'd like to think about this, though. A survey revealed that people drink twice as much alcohol during the holidays. They also spend twice as much time with their families. I don't know, is that a coincidence? So I'd like you to really balance that quality time. Time for you to just idle down. I'd like you to also give yourself a nickname that you like, not the nickname other people have given you. Give yourself a nickname that you like. My nickname for me is Welchy. I don't know what it is. When I just say, come on, Welchie, let's go. It gives me that little psychological pick-me-up, and I make the phone call or I hit send on the email. But sometimes, in our jobs, we have to make some tough decisions. We have to take maybe a different direction that might create a certain amount of anxiety, but give yourself a nickname that you like to just give you that little boost of courage for the next few seconds and make that call or take that action. I'd also like you to put together contingency plans. Don't hang your heart on one solution to a problem. Have a handful of ideas that you're willing to accept, a variety of options that you can live with. Also, volunteer, nothing more stress relieving than that. Giving away what's a luxury for you to people that really need it. And then finally, if none of those 29 ideas work, I suggest pray. I call it reverse delegation. Can't handle this one. Why'd you send me such a big one? Don't send me such a big one next time. But we find that people have a strong spiritual foundation do not suffer stress at the same intensity as people that do not. So you might want to consider that. Now, about 40% of the stress we feel is caused by poor time management. So I wanted to share with you 20 time management tips to get more done in less time. Now, sometimes we have to stop and think about tasks or activities in which we have total control and tasks or activities in which we have some control. Now, tasks or activities in which we have total control would be what we eat. I've never accidentally eaten anything, and I'm sure you haven't either. But if I have a big lunch, I'm kind of sleepy in the afternoon. If I have a lighter lunch, I'm a little peppier in the afternoon. How we interpret things, I think we have quite a bit, if not total control of that. Biting our tongue. I don't know if you're like me, but it's crazy in here, and we think at 800 to 1200 words per minute, and just a little bit of that we share with other people. So our responses in conversation, what we wear, probably, depending on whether it's a uniform, what we do for a living, we might have quite a bit, if not total control. How much sleep we get, there's all sorts of information on how to prepare yourself for a good night's rest. But that's about it. Now, what are the tasks or activities in which we have some control? Everything else in our life. We just need to take some of that control back. So let's talk about some of the ways to do that. Now, one of the ways to delineate that is to practice these 3 tests of time. One of them is the test of necessity. Do I really need to do this anymore or not? Is it necessary? Would my customers notice? Would my coworkers notice? Is it still required or not? And it might not be. Test of appropriateness. If it is something that needs to be done, am I the person that needs to do that? And if so, I better take a class or take a course and develop that talent or skill. Or is it something that we can hire someone from the outside, a subcontractor, to do that for us? Because we've decided it has to be done, it's necessary. Now, appropriateness, who would be suited or ideal to take on that task? And then the next is a test of efficiency. How can we incorporate technology like a flywheel to do it more effectively and efficiently? So the test of necessity, test of appropriateness, test of efficiency sometimes help us to kind of clear out what do we have total control or some control of in our lives. So the way we do this then is establish responsibilities, who's responsible to do what when, establish priorities so we know what's first, second, third, or fourth when it comes down to a choice that needs to be made in our time. Objectives, what are we really up to? What's the task? What are we trying to accomplish? And then what we need to do is eliminate any unnecessary activities, eliminate any inappropriate activities, and then plan and schedule our use of our time. Hopefully annually, then monthly, then weekly, then daily, so that you have kind of that long-term plan so that you can, if you get a little bit behind, you have some strategies to catch up. So I plan out about 2 years in my speaking schedule. I have stuff scheduled in 2022. Some of it because of how much had to be postponed because of what happened this spring and what's happening this summer. And to get back into the rotation at those state and national conventions has pushed me out to some of those events in 2022. I also have a leadership development academy I do for a bank that goes on for 2 years. That goes out to the end of 2022 also for their emerging leaders. So if we plan our life annually, then monthly, then weekly, then we can stay focused on a daily basis on what's the best use of our time. Now, there's some self-generated time wasters I'd like you to consider minimizing the damage of, time bandits that rob us of our productivity. One, of course, disorganization. So we want to make sure we put together an organizational approach that's easy for us to understand. And if it's somewhat sophisticated, provide a guide for someone else in case we get sick or someone else needs to step in if we go on vacation. Want to make sure we eliminate procrastination. We're going to talk about that at the very end. Inability to say no. And what we need to do is say no, give the reason, no, give the same reason, no, give the same reason. So learn to say no 3 times. We know this, the best salespeople don't even close 4 times. A lack of interest, we have to build that in. So we reward ourselves daily. For me, what that is this week, it's Russell Stover French mince. I'll deliver a webinar, and then I'll make 2 phone calls, and I get my treat. And next month I go to the Andes mints, or they kind of taste like wax, but still motivate me. But whenever I give a presentation and I make 2 phone calls, I get my treat. And that's been able to keep me in business for 28 years. Burnout, we talked about stress management, so that's no longer a problem. Gossip, if somebody's talking to you today about somebody else, they'll be talking to somebody else tomorrow about you. So we want to make sure we stay out of that. And then unnecessary perfectionism. Some things need to be done perfectly. Everything else doesn't. And I apologize to the perfectionists that are listening in that you threw up in your mouths. If I'm laying in the hospital bed and the doctor and nurse are saying, is that 100 milligrams or 10 milligrams, I'm saying, hey, would you double check that? I want that to be exactly correct. But if my chicken's warm and I was hoping it was going to be hot, not a big deal. So unnecessary perfectionism would be a good way to minimize some of that time management problem. Environmental time wasters, people stopping by, whether it's by email or phone calls, stand up, tends to cut the conversations in half. Telephone calls, have specific questions. How can I help you? What exactly is it that you need before I hang up? Would there be anything else? Because sometimes those phone calls can drag out for quite a while, and you burn a lot of daylight. It might not be the best use of your time. Now, when it comes to mail and email, you have 4 Ds. Do it right away if it's 2 minutes or less. Delegate it to somebody else, see if they'll do it. Delete it, see if they meant it. Or defer it and to schedule it at a later time. Let people know, I will take a look at that Friday afternoon between 1 and 3. So they know you got it and they know when you're going to take care of it. So do it right away, delegate it, delete it, or defer it, but let that person know when you will be working on it so they don't have to wonder whether or not you got the email or got the message. Unproductive meetings, you want to make sure you get an agenda so you know whether it's a good use of your time. Coffee conversations, run for your lives. If someone's coming towards you with a coffee cup, they're going to stand there till it's bone dry and stone cold. And unused or unnecessary reports, just because technology can pump it out doesn't mean we necessarily have to read it all. So if you could, highlight the information that's most important to the people you work with, and hopefully they'll highlight the information that you should pay attention to too. Okay, so here we go. 20 time management tips to get more done in less time. Number 1 is to adopt the IGDS philosophy. It's had a profound positive effect on me personally and professionally, and I think it will for you too. And that stands for I'm gonna die someday. So we each have 168 hours a week. How are you spending yours? And you have 2 options. You can be remembered, your reputation as a person that was always a little bit late, a little bit behind, and always seemed under stress. Or you could be remembered as that person that seemed to be prepared, that was there on time and managed stress pretty well. The option is, your choice. But I would like us to practice these strategies so that legacy we leave behind is one we're proud of. I'd also like you to take a few hours to plan the next 12 months. Who's graduating from high school, who's those special dates in your calendar when it comes to anniversary, who's getting married, but block in that time now. I don't know if you had a grandma like my grandma, but she would get a calendar every year from the Mormon's feed man, and she'd go into the farmhouse and she'd transfer the old dates from the old calendar to the new calendar. And you could walk out to the end of the driveway on your birthday and you'd always get a birthday card from grandma with $3 in it, but she never missed a day that was important to you. So we want to do that for the people we work with too. So personally, professionally, take a few hours to plan the next 12 months. I'd like you to develop one time management system. I still use a Franklin planner. You can use any of the apps that come with your phone, but you got to make sure you have a calendar and keep it close, because whoever has a calendar controls time. People will schedule around you. And you have 3,000 to 5,000 thoughts a day, so we got to capture those thoughts. There's a research study that claimed that 97% of the population thinks at a genius level at different times of their lives. You have truly genius thoughts on a regular basis. We need that time management system close so we can capture those ideas, record those so we can share those at the most appropriate time. And I'd also like you to create and maintain a to-do list or a master task list. And the reason that's so important is because when you're thinking at 800 to 1,200 words per minute, it feels like you have 800 to 1,200 things to do today. But if you get them down on a list or in a computer file, you'll find you maybe only have, maybe 75 or 80 things to do today. But it calms your mind because now you don't have the anxiety of trying to remember. Instead, you have the energy to take action. So create those master task lists. I do first things first, second things not at all. First things to first, determine what's urgent, what's important, only prioritize 2 tasks at a time. So you have flexibility given how all of our systems are in flux. Get those 2 things done, pat yourself on the back, say, good job, Welchie. Now what's most urgent, what's most important. So urgent, deadline-driven projects, there's, whatever needs to get done or somebody's going to get yelled at. Important, planning, preparation, relationship building, training, empowerment, those type of things, and try to balance one of each. And then if something else comes up that's more urgent or more important, you can say, yes, I will be done at 1 o'clock. I can address that then at about 1:30. So you have flexibility instead of following a long list in order and may not be focusing on what is become the most urgent important task. I'd like you to delegate responsibilities, whether you have the authority or not. I'm amazed what I can get my neighbor's kids to do for me. Prioritize only 2 tasks at a time, and also know your biological time clock. Are you a morning person? Are you an afternoon person? Are you an evening person? 18 years on a dairy farm did not make me a morning person. I'm an afternoon person. When I get a call to speak at a state or national convention, they'll say, are you available that date? And I say, I'm available in the afternoon, because I know I'm better in the afternoon. In the morning, I'm like, come on, Welchie, let's go. Come on, Welchie, let's go. If I have a morning presentation, I have to get up so early, it's like afternoon when I start. So what you want to do is know your biological time clock so you can schedule your most important tasks when you're at your best, and your routine mundane tasks when you have the least energy, and the consequences will be the least. Also schedule thinking time, 15 minutes a day to stop and think. What's the best use of my time? An hour a week to take a look back in the past week, what fell through the cracks, what's coming up next week. Should spend a half a day a month taking a look at what happened last month, what's coming up this month, and a day a year to recall the past 12 months and to also take a look at what's coming in the next 12 months. I learned to say no 3 times, deal with mail only once, and email only once. And if you haven't done that, I'd like you to break down, whether it's mail or email, into 3 different compartments. A pile, need to take action, get on a list of things to do today and get it done. B pile, better read, drag it along, carry it along. If you're waiting for someone or a phone call, you can read it then. And C, can throw, can recycle. Just get rid of it. And somebody else probably has a copy anyway. And then also determine when good is good enough. And this is especially important for perfectionists. And so whenever these 3 cues are being modified, something's got to give. So if quickness is something that's moved up sooner in the deadline, well, quantity or quality might be affected. Or if quantity is what's most important, well, then quickness and quality might have to be adjusted. If quality is number 1, well, we might have to spend more time and we might not be able to do quite as many. But if we can negotiate those 3 cues, quickness, quantity, and quality, it may not be perfect, but I'll tell you what, it's well done, and that's as good as it's going to get today. Analyze your errands, always do things along the way. It might save you 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, but that's an hour a week. Wouldn't it be great to have an extra hour a week? And do 2 things at the same time. Sometimes we can multitask, maybe music in the background or maybe some sort of audiobook in the background, but focusing. But there's it only lasts about 45 minutes or so, and the mind has a hard time doing that. So maybe once in the morning, maybe once in the afternoon, you can do a little multitasking. Minimize telephone and television. Those can be real time wasters. And ask yourself, what's the best use of my time? Maybe first thing in the morning, middle of the morning, right after lunch, towards the end of the afternoon, so you stay focused on the most important tasks. So how do we set those priorities? Well, there's 4 criteria I like to consider. One is intrinsic importance. In our industry and what we do, everyone agrees this is important. Urgency, there's a deadline attached to it. It's deadline driven. There's a certain date, a certain time that must be finished. Potential for delegation, are you the person that's stuck with it? And then the communication frequency, phone calls and meetings, and how much time are we going to spend in that type of communication? So I always like to score these 4 things from a scale of 1 to 4. If it's intrinsically important, it might be a 4. If there's a deadline attached to it, 4. If it's something I can delegate to someone, maybe that's a 2. And the communication frequency, if I delegate to somebody else, that might be a 2. So I might just go ahead and delegate that. But if I hit 4s on all of these, that it's intrinsically important, there is a deadline attached to it, I'm the person that must do it, and there's going to be quite a bit of communication involved, well, I got to tell you what, that's going to be number 1 on my list, and I'm going to make sure I block out that time. And but it gives us an opportunity to see what we can make some adjustments in our priorities and decision making. One of my favorite books is Getting Things Done by David Allen. And he has this model where you have all this stuff coming toward you. And the first thing you do is ask yourself the question, is this actionable? If there's no action required, you can just hit delete. It's just trash. You can shred it. If it's something you want to do someday, we'll put that in a someday file. Someday I'll learn Spanish. Someday I'll take that course. Someday I'll learn that skill or that software. If it's reference material that you know you're going to need and read later, well, then put it in a reference file. Now, if it is something that you need to take action with it, just ask yourself, what's the next action? If it's a project, is it something that needs to go into a project file? Is it something I need to move along to follow the deadlines? And then what you can do is do it right away. If it's 2 minutes or less, delegate it to somebody else, see if they'll do it, defer it, schedule a time that you will finish it, or just delete it. But I love that model. It's kind of like a corn sheller. You have all the corn cobs and silk coming towards you. The cob goes out that way, the silks go out that way, and the grain goes in the box. I love it. It's like going into battle with a shield. You have a sword, you get this done, you block that over there, but it's a great way to go through your day and get it done most effectively. One other way you can maybe keep track of time bandits that are robbing you of your time is to keep a daily log. Every half hour or so, just check in with yourself. What did you do in the last 30 minutes? You might find you had a phone call that went for 20 minutes. It might have only taken 2 minutes to send that email. So you might want to take a look at how you're managing that time. And was today typical, more busy, less busy? And then kind of analyze your own performance. Okay, I put it off as long as I could. How do we break procrastination? Well, first thing, you have to make a commitment like any other bad habit and handwrite a contract. There's all sorts of contracts probably in your office. Lift some of that language out for yourself and say, I take action, I am decisive, and get honest with yourself about the problem. What is procrastination costing you? Any classes or courses or skills or technology you haven't developed or polished? What is that costing you? What is it costing you as far as energy and anxiety and enthusiasm about your career? So if you're putting things off, it isn't necessarily going to get better later. So you got to get honest with yourself what the personal professional cost is of doing that. Set empowering goals, those goals which reward yourself daily. Just to get me moving, it's the presentation, it's the 2 phone calls. I get those 2 things done. Everything else is a luxury, but I want to make sure I get those 2 most important behaviors finished right away. And then I get my treat, my Russell Stover French mints, or I get my Snickers, the fun size Snickers. That's my 3rd rotation besides the Andes mints. Apply flexible time management with good time management. If you're a procrastinator, you want blocks of free time where you can read something, maybe for pleasure, free time where you can go for that walk, free time, you can just go outside and enjoy the weather. But if you're scheduled every 15 minutes, like a little hamster in that wheel as a procrastinator, you're going to hate time management. But if the reward is you get blocks of free time that are guilt-free time that you've earned because of good time management, you'll probably be more likely to keep yourself on a schedule that will guarantee that guilt-free, flexible time. And then practice the 5-minute rule. As soon as you catch yourself procrastinating on a project, drag it back, focus on it for 5 minutes. Hard schedule when you're going to complete it. Now, this is what we sometimes call incubation time. And I think one of the best ways to recognize it is, let's say this weekend you can't sleep and you have a TV in your bedroom and you're watching an old movie, and that person you're living with is sleeping next to you, and you elbow them and they wake up and you say, oh, you couldn't sleep either. Oh, no, I couldn't either. And you say, you're watching a movie, yep, and you see an actor on there and you can't remember their name. Hey, that's, what's their name? And the person you live with is saying something just as valuable, like, yeah, and you can't think of the name. Next morning, you're taking a shower, and all of a sudden you go, Mike Connors had a TV show, Mannix. Peggy was his secretary. Someone drove a cougar. And you're wondering, how come I couldn't think of that before? And that 5 minutes of focus, and then releasing it to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind goes through the file cabinet of our past experience and of the things that we've learned, and pulls that file, and when we're ready for it, it hands it to us, and then we have the information. So if you practice the 5-minute rule, focus for 5 minutes, schedule when you're going to finish it, you bring it back. That project that usually takes 2 hours, you might knock it out in an hour and a half. That letter that usually takes 20 minutes, you might have it done in 10 minutes. The subconscious mind will continue to dwell on that project, even though consciously you're doing something else. So I'd like you to take a look at this information, 1 minute at a time. It changes your attitude and it can change your entire day. And also, if I was an actor, I get paid to play a role. At work, we get paid to play a role. And right now, your role that you need to play, maybe be the best person in your organization, in your family, that manages the stress, time, and procrastination that you face in your life. Now, if you'd like additional information from me or that we discussed, you can contact me directly at kit@welchlin.com or kit@seminarsonstress.com. You can go to my 2 YouTube channels, YouTube/Kit Welchlin or YouTube, is that forward or /Seminars on Stress. A couple hundred videos, just like the ones with Goofy Guy, that you can watch that has content that you can use. They last about 3 minutes apiece. Right now, I'm going to turn the program back over to Krista, and I think we probably have some questions. So, Krista, I'm going to stop sharing and invite you back to the conversation.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So this is the time too, guys. If you got some questions, put them in there. I'll give you a second to type some in. But I think I'm going to guess, Kit, that everyone sitting on this call is like me. That hit a little too close to home. So that was, we as a chamber staff, there's 4 of us on staff, and we were feverishly texting each other going, oh my gosh, yes, that's me. Oh my gosh, that's you. You know, I mean, we really, everything you hit on, really hits home. I feel sad that we couldn't have done this in person, because I think we were all sitting here laughing, and you didn't get, you know, I think that's the hard part for a speaker, right? You don't get to any of the joy of hearing everyone laugh. You're a tremendous speaker.
Hope people are laughing. You know, every once in a while they're not laughing, so you just kind of time it and move on. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, no. So, so some questions. So, what someone is asking, so when you know that an employee is stressed, or how do you know that an employee is stressed versus anxiety and needing counseling or referral? I mean, is there ways?
Yeah, you know, one of the best books, I think, for addressing those things by Carrie Patterson is Crucial Conversations, where it gives you the language to introduce, but in there it also gives you some guidance on how to recognize when people are under stress. And it might be certain word choice that they're using, maybe in emails or in your conversations or phone calls. You can also see it in their body posture, some of the tension or facial expressions. In communication, we call this leakage and seepage, where there's these little micro expressions that you can see, but you got to really pay attention. I always find that information soothes anxiety, not talking stirs trouble. So when I give presentations on change, and of course we're going through a tremendous amount of change right now, sometimes the topic is change and stress and doing more with less. And we talk about change, how the systems are in flux, and anxiety increases by 50%, motivation drops by about 50%, absenteeism goes up 3 times the normal rate. And when it comes to the anxiety, you know, empathetic responses, providing information, whatever you know for sure, but really listening, not just to the content, but also how it's delivered. And I think, you know, if we can create a supportive communication climate where people can be completely vulnerable to discuss what they're struggling with, frustrated with, what they miss, what they're concerned about, and that it's always going to be a positive outcome if they share that with us, I think we can keep people away from necessarily needing to get professional help. But if we can do anything, you know, with an employee assistance or recommend that if it seems like what we're suggesting isn't having the impact we hope. We got to create that supportive communication climate, and you really have to, you know, turn up the notch on your emotional intelligence so you can recognize those behaviors and then modify your responses to help them the best you can. Give them the list of these 30 stress management techniques too. That would always help too.
Right. Well, and that's a good segue into the next question is, obviously you have people on this call who are going to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to take everything you did and I'm going to try and implement all of them. And then you have people who are going to walk away and say, those are all great. And they're going to stick them in a pile. And so and everything in between. And so that's one of the questions is how, you know, as somebody watches this and walks away today, I'm assuming your advice isn't don't do them all. I mean, do you kind of have, okay, do one from each category and then next week ramp up? I mean, you kind of have a way to make people successful at doing these techniques?
You know, that's one of the things that I really miss about having the live presentation when we're face-to-face, because I also provide a handout. And so this particular presentation would be several pages of content. And then what I suggest to people is just read 1 page a day. And I've timed it. It only takes 1 minute to read 1 page of my handouts. But if you would take that minute and read that page, whether it's handling difficult people or change management or customer service, the topics that I speak on, if you just take that 1 minute, it does have an impact on how you're going to respond or how you're going to interact with that customer today or that coworker today. And it only takes a minute. So, you know, the video blogs, you know, I have a weekly video blog that goes out every Monday. You can subscribe to that for free. They last about 2.5 minutes, maybe almost 3 minutes on some of those. Or you can maybe figure out, on certain newsletters where there may be 200, 300 words that you can read. That only take a minute. But I think, I got to tell you this too. Many times when I'm delivering this presentation, I'm thinking to myself, man, did I ever need this? I mean, we all have these shocking events that happen in our life that we didn't plan for. I mean, I had 3 live on-stage speaking events the first week of March, and instead this week I have 3 virtual presentations from my home office. And in that short period of time, my entire business model had to shift. So we can't plan for everything, but we can schedule a minute a day to just get our head on straight, manage our own morale.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time here because we're coming up on 1 o'clock on that. But I do, Kit, I think, I mean, and again, I've got people emailing me and saying this is one of the best presentations I've heard. And so, I mean, rave reviews. Thank you. I think this has been amazing.
Thank you for setting it up.
Oh, absolutely. For those that don't know, Kit, this is just one of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kit, one of many speeches and workshops that Kit does. Obviously, changing a little bit in this environment of what it is, but he has ones that focus on world-class customer service, handling difficult people, how to be good at being on a team. There's a whole array of things that really work for our business community. So make sure that you're checking out his website. Certainly send me an email after the fact. If you want me to make the connection, I'm happy to do so, because there's so many things that can help our business community here. So Kit, again, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing. I want to thank our sponsors as well. Obviously, Firefly Credit Union and Calvi Custom Cleaning. Thank you for being Luncheon sponsors. And for everyone, just continue to watch. We've got, webinars and things coming up on different topics related to business. So just be sure you're watching your email for those. And thank you all. I want everyone have a great day. Kit, again, thank you so much. I hope at some point we can bring you back when we can have you in person. So
I would love that. That'd be great.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.